Hello and welcome to Imbokodo, a roundtable discussion. I'm in conversation with South Africa's women on some very tough issues. It's a conversation, of course, that has to be had. My name is Unathi Batyashe. I'll be your host for this program. Of course, it's a conversation that is essential, but one that is harrowing for tens and thousands of women and children in South Africa, and that is gender-based violence and femicide. Although both men and women experience gender-based violence, the violence that is leveled at women and children is most horrendous, and that is what we are going to be talking about today. Before we start, just a few statistics that were released recently. The national crime stats for the fourth quarter of 2021 and 2022, released in June of 2022, painted a horrific picture of the extent and violence against women and children, particularly young girls in this country. Let me introduce to you my panel for this discussion. I'm joined by very, very brave women. I'm going to start with Noma Mbele. Noma Mbele is a mother. She's an activist, a feminist, a gang rape survivor, and the co-founder of Dusongo Baninga, a community NPO empowering women and children who are victims of gender-based violence. Now, next to her is Taryn Lee Dre. She is a qualified hairdresser, currently running My Mobile Services. She's also a rep for Profile Professional Products. Now, her history with abuse dates to her childhood years. Taryn grew up in an abusive household in her adult years, found herself in a long-term abusive relationship too. Next to Taryn is Renee Bogova. Renee Bogova is from Eldorado Park in the south of Johannesburg and the mother of 3 girls. Now, her youngest daughter, Claudia Bogova, was shot and killed by her policeman, a boyfriend, on the 1st of May 2019. Former cop Gershwin Clint Sweni was charged with 2 counts of murder after shooting Claudia and a Taxify driver in Eden Park in Johannesburg in front of Claudia's 2-year-old child at the time. And also, Claudia at the time was just 22 years old. Next to me, I'm joined by Mara Glennie. Mara has been championing women's rights in South Africa for more than 40 years. She's the founder of Tears Foundation, a woman-led non-profit that provides victims of GBV access to life-changing services. Now, the idea of her innovative service came to her as she was recovering from her life-threatening abuse at the hands of her husband. Next to her is Sumaya Wadi. Sumaya, welcome. She holds a BA and LLB from University of Wits and worked as a criminal law public defender at the Legal Aid Board before moving into private practice and she now owns her own NGO empowerment and development project. She also has a free legal clinic that's running in Lenasia. Ladies, welcome, and of course, tough conversation to have. I'm going to actually start with you, Taryn. I mean, you are still surviving something that happened to you quite recently, but we talked about the fact that you also come from a home that exposed you to gender-based violence. Talk to me about your experience and how your journey to survival has been.
Thank you so much for having me on the show. So I grew up in a home where I definitely experienced abuse between my parents' marriage, and it's something that wasn't spoken about, something that was, when you looked at our family from the outside, you wouldn't say that there was abuse taking place inside the home. And from an early age, this had affected me. I knew this because I was very attached to my mother, and I kind of just wanted to be around her every time there was verbal abuse, physical abuse, and later, and I always knew as a little girl that I didn't want to end up in an abusive relationship. Little did I know that this abuse that I've suppressed and that I haven't dealt with and that I haven't gone for counselling for turned into that I attracted an abusive partner. And no matter how long I prolonged to be in a relationship or waited until the right time to have a boyfriend, it was still something that gravitated to me.
Norma, let me bring you into this conversation now. What happened to you from a gender-based violence perspective?
I never thought I would be an an activist of gender-based violence because it was something that I was minding my own business. Like, I have my life together and I don't have any problems. It was until I was attacked in my own space where I thought everyone is safe in their own homes. I was attacked in my own home in the Val. I was getting raped by 3 young men. They were very young. And it was very difficult for me even to scream or cry because my kids were in another room. And they didn't realize that something was happening to me because I was trying to protect me. And I had a little girl. What I was afraid for was, what if this little girl comes out and she becomes a victim too? I had to make sure that I remain calm. Then after they left, I have to reach out for my phone and call the first person I called was my sister to say this has happened before I even called the cops. And this is how I came to the space of gender-based violence, to say no woman should go alone on this journey. I'm one of those women who never got justice, even have reported the case, because after reporting that case and went to the hospital, evidence was collected and everything. Evidence was packed somewhere in the police storage, which I don't know of. When I saw one of the perpetrators, guess what happened? The FCS came and told me, "We are sorry, ma'am, it will be your word against theirs because your evidence was tampered with."
Harrowing.
And I didn't even understand what is tampering with the evidence because I don't know what was happening. I don't know how do someone tampers with the evidence. It's only when I started like, I need to know more.
Mara, you have been in this business for 40 years through the Tears Foundation, helping, like Usus Noma, other women, recover or start to even recover from what you've also experienced, your own husband. When did you know that enough was enough and I need to leave?
I was so badly hurt I had to learn to walk again. I'd been waterboarded, and that is a very terrible experience. But as with my colleagues around the table, fellow activists,
Absolutely.
we all know people judge us, people blame us, and they don't support you. So it is very traumatizing to come out and admit that either you or a member in your family has been abused because you don't get the support. So you start off with dealing with your personal feelings. So we call ourselves survivors. And one of the reasons that you become a survivor is you determine that you will live. Your life will be better. You will make it good against all odds, whatever anybody else says.
Renee, let me bring you into this conversation. I mean, you had to see your daughter suffer at the hands of her then boyfriend, who at the time was a policeman. She was just 22 years old. Talk to us about when you knew that she was in an abusive, relationship, and what was going on around her.
Thank you for having me on the show. Well, my daughter Claudia, she hid a lot from me, and that's what many women do when they are being abused. They hide it from their families and things. I did hear her a couple of times on the phone talking to him, and she would often be crying. And when I would question her and ask her what is going on, she would say nothing. So I couldn't force anything out of her. And I did tell her, I do not like this boy. There was a point where I even chased him from my house and didn't allow him to come. And she came with him one Saturday afternoon and said, "Mummy, Gershon would like to speak to you. He wants to apologize." And I allowed him to come, and you heard what he had to say. And he apologized and looked remorseful. And it wasn't even long after that I got the news. My daughter is lying in the streets. She's been shot by him.
And I mean, your mind probably immediately went to your grandchild,
Yes.
who was with her at the time.
Yes, I was because the incident took place in Eden Park, the area in which he lived. I'm not familiar with that area. At about 4:30 on that day, my second daughter got a call from his father saying that we must rush to Eden Park as my daughter has been shot. And we managed to go get there. When we, by the time we got there, it already started to get a bit dark. My daughter's body was lying in the street, covered with foil. And I went, opened, and to see if it was really her. And so, no, it is my daughter. And then I asked, where's my granddaughter? And somebody said that a neighbor has the child. And the neighbor brought the child to us, and we put her in my daughter's car, in my other daughter's car, where she stayed until we got through everything that evening. It was a very long night, because when we arrived on the scene of the crime, there were 2 police officers. The area was cordoned off, and there was only 2 police officers standing around there. And they said, we can't touch the body or anything. And there was no forensics, nothing.
I can see that it is still painful, you know, especially because you lost a child. No mother has to go through something like that. You know, Sumaya, we are surrounded by brave women around us. You know, you left your legal practice to make sure that you're on the ground and helping. What are you seeing,
you know,
on the ground?
I must say that I'm not a victim directly, but indirectly. I grew up in a community of Muslim women, strong women all around me, from the matriarch, which is my grandmother and all her sisters, my parents. However, what I noted growing up is that there's such a big cloud of silence around abuse, whether it's emotional abuse, physical abuse, especially the physical abuse. I grew up watching the women around me hide, and sort of, it was this attitude, you have to wipe it away and, you know, face the world with this brave face. And I thought, wow, like, how do they do this? They're so strong women, but it's like almost the societal pressure. And I made some sort of commitment to myself at that time that, you know, I'm going to try and give them a voice in some point. And fate and God and my life's journey has led me to be able to give back. And that's what I wanted to do, is sort of work on the grassroots level and allow women, give them that voice and break that kind of cultural the wrongs, the stigma and everything that surrounds GBV and being abused. And because you see men close ranks around each other, and it's the women are so often, I'm sure Mara, and working in this sort of space, survivors are alone from the point of inception of that incident. That woman is alone.
Sumaya, I actually hold that thought, because we're going to take a quick break, but I want us to talk about the avenues that women can take. You are watching the Imbokodo Roundtable discussion. I'm in conversation with some very brave women of South Africa, discussing some issues that they are facing as a result of gender-based violence. When we come back, we'll discuss how you can escape an abusive relationship if you are in one, and also what avenues you can take from the system itself. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back. I'm in conversation with some of South Africa's women who have survived abuse at the hands of their perpetrators in this discussion of gender-based violence. I'll come back to you. You know, we were having a conversation earlier on, Taryn, about, you know, the environment that you grew up in and, you know, what that meant to you in terms of escaping at the hands of your abuser. And you went to a safe home after that. I want us now to discuss just how easy it is to get help. You know, what are some of the challenges that you encountered? A lot of the times you hear people saying, why didn't she leave? You know, why did she stay at the hands of her abuser? Talk to us about when that moment came for you where you decided to seek help. How easy was it for you, or how difficult was it for you?
Okay, so it wasn't an easy thing to do. Hence, I had the help from my neighbors who had been not putting pressure on me, but have talked me into, putting an end to this. And at that moment, I realized, like, I've always wanted to put an end to this. I wanted to put an end to this in my parents' marriage. I kept asking my mom, when are you going to leave? And in this time, it was so difficult for me to leave, and I understood why my mom didn't leave. And that was my PowerPoint when my neighbors then spoke to me and talked me into, opening up a case just to get my perpetrator in a position where he is noting that I'm serious about this. And that was the first step, was going to the police station, opening up a case, and also letting my perpetrator know, like I'm serious about this. It's coming to an end now, and we are not in this for our traditions or our cultures. We are in this because I'm a human being and I have rights, and you're a human being and you have rights as well.
So the police worked with you. Did the system, other systems work with you? For instance, you sought help from a safe haven. Why did you do that?
The reason I did that was because, first of all, I was coming to terms with the fact that I know this is an abusive relationship, and at the time I did not have any family members or around me, or wasn't comfortable enough to go to those doors and be like, I need help in this area, just because of the notion and the stigma. It's not our business, it's not our problem. And I knew that it wasn't a problem of my family, and then I felt comfortable and safe with the help of the NGO at the police station, Lifeline NGO, the social worker who had talked me into the process as what's going to happen at this place, in terms of just breaking away, clearing your mind, and then, stabilizing yourself to get into from that safe house into a different area, a place where he could not find you. So that for me seemed like an option where I could deal with this by myself and not have other voices interfere with the process that I need to go through, because people don't realize it's a process and it's a big step to take.
I wanted to talk about that process. Mara, your organization, has a checklist for women who are actually ready to leave an abusive relationship. Talk to us about just the key focal areas that they should concentrate on in order for them to leave, because we are hearing that sometimes, you don't get the help that you need from the system and from other NGOs as well as government.
Well, international research and research in South Africa shows that women attempt approximately 9 times to leave their partner before they actually succeed. And normally it's the help of someone, because I love that your neighbours were prepared to help you. Because most people come to us with, my sister's in an abusive relationship and I just wish she'd leave. And I answer with, what are you going to do to help her? Can she come and stay with you? Because it's very easy from the outside, looking at someone in an abusive relationship, having a list in your head of all the solutions, but you are not part of them. Well, then actually, quite honestly, I think you should keep quiet, because words are not going to help that person. So in order to leave, I believe you have to make the decision and you have to plan to leave. So of course, the exclusion to that is if your life is in danger, run. So nothing's worth, but so that the escape plan that we have is very simply, most women have been robbed by their male partners of their independence. So you look at the independent aspects. If you have a driver's license and it's not up to date, get it updated. If you don't have a bank account, go and open a bank account. And it's a whole list of all those things. Collect all your papers. If you're married, get your marriage. Even if you married not in the South African law but a religious marriage, if lobola was paid and there's not a marriage, all that stuff, because when you leave you're never going to get a chance to get all that paperwork. Pack an overnight bag so that if you do have to run, as you did, you can grab the bag, decide what's in it, get a burner phone. save up from your monthly money or put it on your birthday list. Have a spare phone so that you can phone. Make a list of contact numbers. In other words, get ready to leave. Because part of your preparation of getting everything ready to leave prepares you in your heart to really leave. Because that was your thing. You'd prepared yourself in your heart to leave. And then to be entered into a shelter, you do have to lay a charge. Because that's the shelter's protection that they can show away, because men hunt down their partners.
I mean, Renee, I wanted to bring you in. Your daughter obviously was in a relationship with a man that you saw was abusive, but again, they become so manipulative and, you know, can twist stories around. I mean, he came to you to apologize, and obviously you believed him.
Yes, I believed his apology, but something kept niggling that something is still not right here, you know. But for my daughter's sake and to keep peace in the home, I didn't want to nag and go on about that. And then when she went to him that day, because it was April the 20-something was going to be his birthday, and there was supposed to be a party or something, and she was going to come home the following day, which was a public holiday. And the afternoon, she did call me and say, "Mummy, can her older sister come and fetch her?" And the sister said, "Okay, wait, I've still got something to do." But we were preparing to go and fetch her when it seems like she couldn't wait any longer, so she managed to get the taxify. And when the taxify arrived to pick her up, apparently he was saying that that's her boyfriend. And they got in the car and they started to move away, but he chased after them and he shot the taxify driver first. And the car lost control, but she wasn't hurt at that time. He pulled her out of the car, because when we came on the scene, she was no longer in the car, she was lying outside the car and lifeless. And apparently he had given himself up to go and say that he's committed a murder. And like I said, there was 2 police officers on the scene when we arrived. This matter was not reported to IPID, yet the police know that such a thing should be reported. They do not even have in the police stations big boards there or something notifying people that should an officer commit a crime, these are IPID's numbers, contact them.
Well, thank you so much for that. Norma, so you work now with victims, and of course it's a long process for them to reach that stage where they can actually speak out and stand up for themselves. We know that justice was served in Claudia's case, but in yours it wasn't. You know, where do you think the laws in our country go wrong? I mean, earlier we were having a conversation that it seems a lot of what is in place doesn't actually work when it comes to implementation.
Sure, it's a lot. The challenge is that with our SABs, if we have the IOs which are not committed to their work, then we won't get justice. When we have SABs members who cover up for perpetrators, we won't get justice. This is the reality. I asked this question on a meeting when the Commission of Gender was giving a report to say, how are you holding the IOs accountable? If the IO goes to court and the case is thrown out after 9 years because proper procedures were not followed by the same people. Yes. How are you holding them accountable? Because in the first place, this is a human being who lost their lives. They have families. The case dragged 9 years. And the people who were supposed to make sure that these 5 men end up in jail, they walk free because your people didn't do the proper investigation or the proper procedures. How do you hold them accountable? Then it was like the supervisors are not, and we know that's not true.
I like that about accountability. Sumaya, maybe you can interject there. I mean, where is it broken? Is it at the SABS level? Is it at the, you know, in the courts?
I think we have a great general body of legislation. So one of the greatest constitutions in the world. However, we suck at implementation. What she said is very important. We have constables fresh out of college sitting with over 50 and 60 files per constable in a jurisdiction. It's ridiculous. You cannot do justice to those investigations. You cannot. We have the systems broken on the part of SAPS. Big time. We need a real overhaul, and we have to get the politics out of it. And I don't want to get into a discussion. Mr. Sele will defer or say, no, I'm incorrect. But practice on the ground. The system's broken from SAPS. Resources in terms of the Department of Social Development. We do not have officials trained to receive that victim from the time they walk. Yes, we have victim empowerment centres attached to police stations, which are, like she said, Lifeline, run by NGOs. So we need government support. We need a social worker stationed, or a team of social workers stationed at every police station in this country, so that they have compassion and they have the proper support and sort of advice and legal kind of direction. Because for this woman, she's thinking about my child, I just got a blue eye, I don't want to phone my father, I don't want to phone. She's relying on total strangers who are ill-equipped to take her forward.
So I'd like us to discuss further those solutions. I mean, I think there's plenty on the table, particularly what the Commission for Gender Equality said in terms of how the South African Police Service is equipped or ill-equipped to deal with gender-based violence cases. But we take a quick break now, and when we return, we look at some of those interventions that can be done at South African Police Service level, and just some of the solutions we think that can also emanate from our community. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Imbokodo Women's Roundtable discussion. I'm in conversation with some very brave South African women as we commemorate Women's Month. Of course, the question we're now asking around gender-based violence, which is deep-rooted in this country, is do our laws work, and who do they favor more? When we went to break, Renee, we were discussing about your daughter and how your granddaughter is now 5 years old, and she witnessed her mother being shot, at the age of 2 at the time. And of course, your daughter was only 22 years old when she was shot and killed by her perpetrator, who was now serving time behind bars. But we were speaking about, just in terms of the laws. Do you feel that the laws worked in your favor in this instance?
To a certain extent, I have to agree, yes, it did work in my favor. But the thing that irks me is the fact that the law is still more on the criminal side than on the victim side. Because nobody follows up with victims and their families asking how they're doing. But if a criminal complains about something in the prison, then human rights will come out and say he has a right to this and he has a right to that. What about the victims? Do they not have rights? My daughter's not here today to speak for herself. I am speaking on behalf of her. And it hurts when you think a criminal is given this for free and that for free, and yeah, he's taken away a member of a family that was working and taking care of her child. And nobody's come around to ask how you doing, how you coping financially or whatever. Nobody cares about that, but he gets all the perks that you could get in this country as far as the law goes.
And that goes back to my comment when we were on break about the trained social workers that have to work hand in hand with the police services in order to provide, and NGOs. Currently, everybody's working in a silo. And yes, the 12 points and the work that's been done, with GBV, we need to stop having indabas, and we really need to start connecting the dots, because the anger you hear in here is a sliver of what we experience every day from victims.
And sometimes when justice isn't served, it leaves some of the victims or survivors with such, helplessness. So we were talking earlier that, the suicide rates in particularly as it relates to young men and boys, who are assaulted is actually high.
We don't really openly talk about sex in our society, whether it be in school or in our homes. In fact, in some cases where I've addressed it at schools, the children have been banned from speaking about it when they get home. So we need to talk about sexual behaviour and the results thereof and what's appropriate and not appropriate. We also, in my opinion, need to stop using our traditional laws and our traditional society norms to protect abusers. I have young girls of 9 and 10 that are pregnant by their cousins, and the families say, but it's Ubuntu to take the baby. We'll take the baby. There's not a problem. But I'm looking at a 14-year-old that's been raped, that's got a baby who generally has to go out of school. So there's an enormous impact on having poor sexual education for our youth.
And we were talking earlier just about that accountability in as far as law enforcement authorities are concerned, in whatever the case is. You were talking about the system needs to be entrenched at police station level. You were just giving an example of a case that was clear, the evidence was there, but there was just no will to actually solve this particular case. What are some of your, the people that you are helping, what are some of the stories that they are telling you in as far as getting that sense of accountability?
Sure, it's a lot. I will just highlight few cases that are a challenge. A young girl of 14 was brutally murdered after she had reported the case with the grandmother, and it was a process. They had a huge file where a grandmother was writing the dates when she goes to the police station. When her granddaughter was murdered, it was after she met the station commander, and the station commander was a woman, and she kicked her out, threatened her to be arrested. On the very same day, this young girl was kidnapped and murdered by the same person who has been harassing her, who has also stabbed this young girl's father because he tried to stand up for the daughter. And when they went to court, when he was when the judgment came, they said it was culpable homicide, while it was murder, because it was a process. She was stabbed, she was victimized. So how do we say our system really favors victims? And we had a woman who was shot and murdered, and then the boyfriend came and took the cell phone on the crime scene. I'm not saying the boyfriend is the perpetrator, but I'm saying why the person who's tampering with the evidence was never arrested on this day. And seeing the family who has lost a daughter who was gang raped and murdered, after 9 years, the case dragged to court, the Makasane family. Then their daughter, when we lost the case, the other one was in the morgue, sleeping there, and we never got justice. So the system needs to do something which will favor the victims. And if the police don't have a will to work, they must give other people who has, and somebody must be held accountable, from the minister to the head of the police, to say your people are not working. Why are we paying them with our taxes when they are not doing anything actually?
Taryn, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I can just vouch on that in terms of disappointment with my case, where my case was not followed through with, and just the negligence or the nonchalant attitude around the case was very disappointing to me. Until this day, I have not been contacted by the social worker or the police or anybody who was dealing with my case to find out, am I okay? How am I coping? Am I safe? It's 1 year later, no follow-up of me as the victim. And then I go further and I question and I observe and look at this is the value system and the moral system of our country. That's what it boils down to. That the value system and the moral system, the morals of our country is that we don't have integrity in the line of work that we are busy doing. And once you can match up value system morals to the integrity of people in their working environments, you then get better structures running. So it's unfortunate that the integrity of our people and the SAPs is not matching up to what their duty calls to be. So
court officials too. Court officials too. It's a disappointment. I have a case currently where a high-powered connected attorney. We have a protection order granted by consent 4 months, 3.5, 4 months ago. But it still has not been served on him because he is evading service. It's so frustrating for the women to go forward. And this is just the first aspect, is getting the protection order. There's still maintenance to look at. Accessing children, the actual divorce. So at the offset, the system kind of, women just throw their hands up and there's no help.
Another place where the system was questioned is actually in the Muslim community. We saw that constitutional court ruling on marriages now. What does that mean for women in your community that have been suffering at the hands of their spouses most of the time?
Look, in a country such as ours, where women should be given constitutionally protection across the board. The judgment is clear in that it finally affords women protection that they did not have in terms of having their marriages recognized. For some women, they choose. I'm quite happy being Islamically married and having the Islamic system kind of deal with my marriage. However, for a disempowered woman or a woman who is seeking maintenance or access to her children, the court judgment makes a huge difference to those women.
Ladies,
in my case, I'm happy that justice was served. But all I can say, it was not thanks to SAPS. It was all thanks to the IO from IPID that did a thorough job. And I really, really appreciate that.
I want us, when we come back, to discuss the conversations that we can have with our families back home. You raised a very important thing about integrity and just how our society needs to start talking about these things. You also raised the fact that we need to start talking to our young children about sexual orientation, etc. So let's have those conversations, and also, messages to those that are still trapped and what they can do. We take a quick break. We'll be back straight after this. Welcome back. You are watching the Imbokodo Roundtable Women discussion. Of course, I am joined by a group of very brave women as we discuss a serious issue of gender-based violence in this country. Of course, we know GBV affects both men and women, but we know that the violence is mostly inflicted to women and children. So the last part of our conversation really is about, even though we are discussing this, even though we know that there's so many challenges within our system, somewhere out there, somebody is trapped in a relationship that is very, very disastrous for them. I mean, you had a harrowing experience at the hands of your husband. What are some of the thoughts that you can leave a woman who wants to leave, or a child who is being abused at home? Just some of your thoughts in terms of what can they do? What hope is there for them, and where can they start seeking help? Let's start with you.
I would say the first help you can seek from your own community. There is an NGO in every community, and there is a friend in every community. There's this auntie in the community who's always labeled loud. The person will be labeled loud because she's always in people's issues when they do wrong things. Find that auntie in the community. Find the NGO. Just walk around, and I'm glad that schools now has a social worker based and the teacher school support group. They are able to talk to these kids because it's a new generation. And I want to say there's still hope. When I was in need for a woman, I reached out to Baloworld. Baloworld connected me with Tears Foundation. I was able to assist the woman through other people. So if we can learn to genuinely hold one another's hand so that everyone knows that I'm not alone on this journey and it's okay to talk about my pain so I can get help.
Any advice for women out there that are, and most of the time, you know, they really don't know where to turn and who to trust, most importantly? I mean, we had a conversation now that women are also being accused of not trying to make their marriages work. You know, even at police level, we heard of a case where the police said, you know, just go and have a talk with your husband. You guys will sort it out within a couple of days.
Yes, that is a very big problem. So when I went to the police station to get help for my abuse, I was told to come back on Monday, and it was Friday because there was no one to help me. So when I got well, I decided I'd start a service that was free to every community in South Africa where you could find the 3 nearest places for help. So that's what I did. It's the free number that works on every phone, *134 *7355 hash. *134 *7355 hash. On that number you can do 2 things. You can say that you want the nearest place in your area so that if you are in Beaufort West, you could get the nearest place to you in Beaufort West. But we do have another service because I needed, my life was in danger, where you can say you're in a life-threatening situation and they will phone you back within 10 or 15 seconds and if necessary send an armed response vehicle or the police. So I'm saying reach out as quickly as possible for help. We do want to help you. Our logo is bringing hope and healing because with hope you have to heal.
I think that as women in general, because I'm in a predominantly women industry, I think that if we start normalizing the conversation about our relationships and break down those barriers of judgment, we are able to then share stories and be of comfort to each other. And so what I do is I make sure that every woman I come across and every client or person that I meet, I make sure that I'm a woman's woman. I make sure that I have no judgment, no barriers, no any kind of stigma that is attached to me to not allow another woman to be free. Because so much times we pretend.
And one of the things that you said is that, you know, because this incident for you happened, you know, just recently, that healing is a process, it's a journey, and that you're still struggling now, you know. So I think that's important for women to know that, you know, healing really does not take, it really takes time, and it wants you to, you know, before you jump into survivor mode, you really need to work on yourself because that's crucial, right, for you.
Yes. So what I have been doing, I've been very intentional with my healing. So what I do is I read lots of books around mental health, around abuse. I make sure that I educate myself on the food that I eat because that also plays a very big part in how your mind processes things in terms of depression and how it lingers thereafter. So I've made sure that I educate myself, and not only myself but my son as well. And that's the one area that I feel very proud of, is how my situation and my past has allowed me to become a better mother in terms of what I do with my son to make sure that he is becoming a mindful boy, a conscious boy, as early as 7 years old, 8 years old.
And breaking that cycle,
a conscious boy and a mindful boy. My closing point would be to the victims, wherever you are, whatever your situation is, you are enough and there's always light. But more importantly, to everybody else surrounding the victim, I would like to say that it is your business and you can speak up and get involved because that's the big problem. We all take the step back and we don't, it's not our business. And I want to say to South Africa that's, you know, it is your business. If that woman is, if you're hearing your neighbor get beat up night after night, it is your business. It is your responsibility to step in.
That's the wrap of the show, of course. This issue of gender-based violence and femicide is pivotal in our country, and it needs to be addressed, and it needs to be addressed very, very fast. And I thank my guests for opening up today. You know, ordinary South Africans walking their truth to power as survivors of gender-based violence. Thank you so much, and that's a wrap.